What systems or system ideas have you considered experimenting with?
Most of the time, when I get a wild hair up my ass about some sort of system experiment, I find that very motivating, so that sets me out to do something. And when I'm creating systems, I'm trying to solve a particular problem or a suite of particular problems. So, like, Actual Fucking Monsters uses a combination of dice to give you a variety of bell curves. So that was a way of combining dice to give you a consistent average, but to also reflect skill, but leaving it open to a fairly broad set of results and the consequences system, which I put together in that, and ways to use system to motivate people. So that had several different systems sort of coming together in one. It probably needs a revision to just tidy it up and put out an ultimate edition of some kind. So I'd like to return to that at some point. Lately, I've been kind of sighing in a resigned fashion, looking at the landscape of gaming as it exists now, and thinking that there's too much competition out there, especially in terms of small indie games produced on a low budget. Marketing and getting eyes on your product has become more and more difficult, and so I feel like network externalities have become far more important. So what that means is you need to emphasize looking for a bigger, broader audience a lot more, which basically boils down to having to write for an established system that is open to people in one way or another. And we have truly open systems, and we have semi-open systems, and then we have people who act like their system is open, but when you delve into the details, it isn't. And obviously, with my preference for horror and adult content, some companies seem quite reluctant to let someone play with their toys in those kind of contexts. So it's difficult and it's a minefield. And I'm not really an OSR guy, despite having been pigeonholed weirdly in that area. But of the available options, producing more for the OSR is more tempting because it's more accepting and understanding of the things that I want to do with their toys. That there's basically no control, and there is an appreciation for grittier, grimier gaming, which is my preference. Otherwise, the two main ideas that are going around and around and around in my head at the moment are a mecha system based around scavenging technology and constructing mechs from the bits. Now, I've previously had another idea that runs the same way for doing robots, and some of the idea stems from a game called Frankenstein Factory. It's a Polish game which was going to be translated and released over here, which I was involved in. Somehow that fell through. But in some of those, you construct your character from the cards. So you put together a Frankenstein or a robot or a mech in my ideas. So you've got an arm, another arm, torso section, legs, head, and those provide the statistics and so on for the overall thing. So in my notional mecha game, you would fight and smash and scavenge and try to get parts, and then you could put the parts together in your sort of Franken mech. And as you took damage, you might lose parts, but then you can loot other parts from the enemies that you destroyed and so on, and you'd spend time scavenging. And then do you use those scavenging points to build up your base camp or to repair your mech or what? So that's one idea, kind of using cards. Another idea is to use cards again, but to represent your character. So you have a deck. When you take damage, you lose cards from your deck. When you try to do something, you draw cards from your deck, and then you see if you've got the appropriate points. So if you're playing a strong brutal barbarian character, you know, you might have cards in your deck that are strength +3, strength +2, you know, rage, and some combination of those cards would give you a total against a difficulty. But figuring out the odds and the mix of cards and so on is quite difficult with that. And the last idea that's going around in my head at the moment is solving the kind of martial arts problem to create a game that is engaging for one-on-one duels, martial arts battles, but can also cope with larger scale stuff. And the idea there would be you roll some dice to generate opportunities for attack, defense, movement, or whatever. You can change the dice at a certain cost, move them around, and get the results you want. But the problem there is handling that for lots of enemies, or figuring some way to make it all work together. There's something there, but I can't quite put my finger on it.